Good morning, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion. Now we're talking about Tropical Storm Nate, designated from the National Hurricane Center this morning as of the 8 a.m. intermediate advisory. 40 mile per hour winds, the pressure 999 millibars, and it is practically onshore down here in Central America, in Nicaragua. And from there, things are going to get really interesting and either really tough for people along the northern Gulf Coast or not so much. This one's going to be a cliffhanger, I do believe, and I will explain why. This is part of the plot twist. It's a non-tropical area of low pressure moving through the Florida Straits. This in and of itself is bringing quite a bit of inclement weather, squally weather, as it interacts with an upper level low, and there's just this huge area of cloudiness and showers and storms, and I'll show you that in just a moment on the satellite loop, and all of this interacting together. And then there's some interesting energy over in the southeastern Pacific still, makes the overall forecast here very complicated and certainly not one that is straightforward. So let's look at the 5 a.m. track map, even though it has the 8 a.m. intermediate advisory plot. It is a tropical storm now, probably weakens back to a depression, but that's just wind speed and textbook kind of classification stuff that we're talking about here. The bottom line down here in Central America and for the Yucatan, more than likely going to bring a lot of heavy rain. Of course, it's doing that now, and that will continue. And, there is the threat that it tries to rapidly strengthen once it moves off of land and towards the northeast Yucatan. That's always there. So, don't be shocked if it becomes a hurricane before reaching the northeastern Yucatan. And to that end, a hurricane watch is in effect for that corner right there. Because you just never know, especially over the very warm water, the warmest water in the Western Hemisphere, lying in that area, waiting for this to move over. And, the environment is positive for this to develop. We'll go over that too. But anyway, this is what the track looks like. And you remember, just recently, it looked like it could make landfall somewhere over here. And now we're talking about a potential landfall if you connect the dots, somewhere like this. Maybe southeast Louisiana gets clipped, maybe Mississippi. It's hard to say. This has been an interesting shift. And the GFS has pretty much shown this the entire time, more or less, while the European model has been quite far to the east, and it looks like this is a score for the GFS on track. Now the question becomes, will the GFS be correct with the intensity, indicating pretty much all along that this was going to be more of a rainmaker. Remember Cindy? So this would be like an October version of Cindy, according to the Global Forecast System, the main American operational model and its ensembles, the GFS. So we'll get into all that. So let's look at the satellite presentation, kind of looking at the evidence before us before we try to look at what may happen in the future. And you notice a couple of things. First of all, here it is. It's making landfall now, and it's got fairly decent banding. It's eastern weighted for the most part. Land interaction is disrupting the inflow. There's some negatives here because it's interacting with land. That's the primary negative, obviously. And there's a lot of moisture being lifted out. There's an upper level low sitting over here, and showers and storms and energy up in the Florida Straits and over parts of South Florida, through the Keys, over Cuba, western Jamaica. I mean, this is just an entire conglomeration of just foul weather. And then you've got this energy trying to compete with everything south of Guatemala and El Salvador. So there's a lot going on here. And to that end, if this wasn't here and this wasn't here, and we just had, a favorable setup aloft, this would probably already be close to hurricane strength as it moved up towards that area over the last 30 hours or so. But we do have these other features there, and they do complicate things quite a bit. So let's look at some more of, like I say, follow the evidence. And this is a very important piece of that evidence, piece of the puzzle this morning. I'm trying to choose the right color here. Let's use orange. Maybe that'll work. So here is the vorticity signature of what is now Tropical Storm Nate. And in fact, what I want to do is zoom in on this and make it easier to see everything, if this will let me. Come on. Thank you. All right. So here's the vorticity signature of Nate, and it's still pretty round. There's no weird shape to it overall, but you do have other pieces of energy out here. One here, an elongated area over here. Let me just switch back to green or something. Let's see. All the colors I want are already on the chart. So you have this, you got this over here, and then you have this area of vorticity with a maximum here, looks like over western Cuba. And so all of these pieces of energy here, these pieces of vorticity, are competing for the same energy that's in this region. And there's only so much to go around. And so something has to either move out of the way, which I think this is going to do here, and allow this to come up and sort of have the whole buffet to itself, or Nate is going to struggle down here as it moves up and through the area, because there's just so much else going on. I mean, literally, it's like, you go to Golden Corral, and if you're the only one there, you got the whole buffet to yourself. You can stuff your belly and have a big smile on your face. And this whole area of energy through here with the sea surface temperatures is the Golden Corral. Trust me, these upper ocean heat content values, especially through this region right in here, like I said, are the highest in the Western Hemisphere. But this isn't the case. Basically what we have is, college football team showed up at the Golden Corral 5 minutes before you got there. And so, yeah, you know what I mean? The coaches, the assistant coaches, and all the players, and maybe even the media pool, that's all this. All right? And so there's you, and you're like, yeah, there's not going to be much left at the buffet for me. And so you got to wait. You got to wait for the college team to leave, and then maybe you get a chance. Is that a good enough analogy for this early in the morning? So we shall see. What it does have going for it, it's well defined, and the vorticity signature is there. The upper level winds are favorable. There is plenty of moisture. So there's not going to be any of this dry air nonsense going on that we've seen in prior seasons that just dries these systems up. And it also seems to have favorable upper level winds along its path overall. But I think the key here is, does this move out of the way this way and open up the path for this to come in and strengthen without any impedance? And we'll just have to wait and see. I don't know the answer to that. Let's look at the discussion, though, here from this morning, the 5 a.m. advisory package. In the first paragraph, deep convection was noted, and of course in the 3 hours since this was issued, it's become a tropical storm. Second paragraph, and this is the area, and this is what we just talked about, that the intensity forecast is definitely uncertain, and it's going to be interacting with land, and then it's going to come off of land, and then interacting with land again in 48 hours. But after it leaves the Yucatan Peninsula, it should strengthen. That being said, the intensity models have continued a downward trend. But we saw, before that happened, an upward trend. And so just to have consistency and not to windshield wiper back and forth, oh, I don't think it's going to strengthen as much, and you lower it, and then it comes back, ooh, wait a minute, rapid intensification, and then you have to go back up again. It's nice to just kind of go middle of the road and err on the side of caution. You'd rather be wrong in forecasting it to be stronger than it actually is than to say we don't think this is going to become much of a big deal, which that would never happen, at least I hope not, and then it becomes a very strong hurricane. You just never know. So they do, talk about, this is forecaster Brown, that some additional strengthening is possible while the system moves over the southern and central Gulf of Mexico, and they basically are following with the best agreement of the ship's intensity model. What does that mean? That is the statistical hurricane intensity prediction scheme, and it's a statistical model. And so, to simplify it, all things being equal, because of this right here, let's try that again, and the time of year that we are in, climatologically this area is favored, then we'd have to think, statistically speaking, this has a great shot of becoming a hurricane, and possibly a strong hurricane. Upper ocean heat content is there. Again, the atmosphere is moist. So you folks up here, all along this region, enough uncertainty exists that you just don't want to wait this one out and say, well, I'm going to just kind of hold. And, if you see it, that local officials are saying, look, we think you need to evacuate. We're not there yet. There's no watches or warnings posted for the U.S. just yet. But I'm just saying we have to be careful with this one. It might be looking a little bit better for the coast, but I don't want to completely go into that camp just yet. We've seen hurricanes strengthen very quickly, and even in 2009, Hurricane Ida made a similar trek this way and really ramped up, and then kept doing so into the Gulf of Mexico in November of all months, and then died out as it got closer to shore, simply because climatology was against it at that time, and the environment up here along the northern Gulf Coast in early November is quite a bit different than it was and is in early October. So, I don't know, this one's going to be a tough one, and let me just show you what I'm talking about. I mean, we addressed intensity a lot. This is what the European showed for a potential landfall on the morning run yesterday. The 12Z run yesterday, and then 12 hours later, the 0Z run last night shows this. It's like, what happened in 12 hours? Well, you notice a couple of things. That's much stronger, just looking at the overall look to it, than this is. Now, granted, this has been inland for a little bit, and the other one, it was sitting there right on the coast. So what is the difference in the track? Well, let's go back to the discussion here. Let's get rid of the markings, and let's read about the track forecast from the discussion. The depression is moving northwestward at about 6 knots. The cyclone is forecast to move northwestward to north-northwestward during the next day or two around the western side of a ridge that extends from near the southeastern Bahamas southwestward into the central Caribbean Sea. By the weekend, a large mid to upper level ridge is forecast to build off the coast of the southeast United States, and this should steer the cyclone north-northwestward at a faster forward speed. After 72 hours, the system is expected to recurve around the northwestward side of the ridge. The track guidance is in better agreement this cycle with the latest runs of the Euro and the UK Met shifting westward, closer to the previous GFS and H-WRF iterations. Isn't that interesting? A lot was said last night. I'm just going to editorialize for a minute. I saw quite a few tweets last night about people wanting their tax dollars back because the GFS was fake news. They really said this. And I know some of it's tongue-in-cheek, but so much stock is put into the European as if it's infallible. And then I'm reading it to you right here. We can see it. I just showed you the actual European forecast 12 hours apart. Yeah, I mean, come on, people. You got to just relax. And everybody's looking at the models, and they're not looking at the overall pattern and how complex it is. And you just look at one, the European. I mean, honestly, that's like saying that, some superstar key player on a basketball team in the NBA or a quarterback, college or pro football, is going to carry the entire team. You need the rest of the team to help out. And the GFS and the other models, it's all part of an overall consensus. And most of the consensus models were well west of the European. I just thought I'd throw that in there. I don't care either way. I just want there to be consistency. I mean, if the hurricane is coming, a hurricane, I want to know that I can believe in the forecast from the global models and thus the National Hurricane Center. And so all of this shifting and whatever results in this last sentence right here. This has required a fairly substantial westward shift in the NHC forecast track at days 3 and beyond. I mean, gee, poor guys down there. I mean, that's rough. It really is, because there is a lot of stock put into what the European model says, because generally speaking, it does very well, especially with hemispheric patterns and large-scale weather features, but in this case, not so much. All right, so there you go, even more complex than we thought. And just one more time, that was the morning run, that was last night's run, and so there you go. All right, so what's the bottom line? Well, the bottom line is we're going to have to keep waiting. I think we will know, and I should do air quotes there, right, in about 48 hours, which does not give us a lot of time to get ready, because another 48 hours after that, it's probably on the coast. You know what? I want to go and just read one more thing. I forgot. It jumped out at me as I was reading this to you all. Notice right here where the forecaster says, by the weekend, a large mid to upper level ridge is forecast to build, etc., and this should steer the cyclone north-northwestward at a faster forward speed. And then after that time, it's expected to recurve around the northwestward side of the ridge. That's really interesting. And can you figure out why? Normally, what do they say about when something's recurving? That a large mid and upper level trough is coming, right? Remember Matthew this time last year? Large mid upper level trough. What happens when a trough is approaching? You start veering the winds out of the southwest, there's shear, and the system usually weakens, naturally. This one is just simply going to go around the west side of the ridge, instead of, and there's a weakness there, but it's not the same as a trough coming. And so it's interesting because this part about steering also tells me that there could be a problem with intensity, because usually when they just go around the west side of a ridge like this in their recurving pattern, there's the high pressure area, the outline of the ridge like that, there's no shear to speak of. They're just coming around the weakness here, and there's maybe a big high sitting over here somewhere, and this is your alleyway. It's not the same as some giant longitudinal trough coming down and carving out and booting the system out. So that's really interesting. We'll have to see how this affects things over the next couple of days. Either I'm on to something or I'm wrong in my instinct there. But I just thought I'd point that out. You do this long enough and you start noticing things, and that's not some hidden message that they have in there. I just think, hey, wait a minute, it's just going to go around the ridge. Other hurricanes have done that. You know, they do that all the time off the east coast of the U.S. There's just not enough ridge to get them to hit the United States, which is a good thing, because if they all did, nobody would live at the coast. But you know what I mean? Just think about that. We've seen that before. There was not enough ridging to get Jose into the eastern U.S. There was not enough to get Maria. There were some troughs involved, but you know, this is interesting. I'll have to follow up on that as the day and through tomorrow progresses. All right, sorry I'm going long on this. What are my plans? Well, I'm preparing to head to the Gulf Coast, unless this just completely falls apart, which I don't think it will. I'm going to be there. In fact, we are hoping, as this will probably be the last major impact storm or hurricane of the season, that this will be the opportunity to launch our weather balloon, the Herbie project. More on that in tomorrow's update, because then we'll know a lot more, and I'll know more about where I'm heading. But right now, I'm planning on leaving in the morning, by 10 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, and, I'll go wherever I need to go. It's all up to Nate. I don't know exactly where that's going to be yet. Believe me, I'd tell you. So all along the way, of course, I'll be streaming live, and this time I'm going to stream the vehicle cam to YouTube, and have a live look on YouTube Live. Our subscribers to the HurricaneTrack Insider site, I'm going to have something different set up that we're going to be testing. I think you're going to really like it. And, we're always trying new things and trying to reach the most people and have the most benefit. Real quick, don't forget, we do have our app in the App Store and on Google Play. It is called Hurricane Impact, and everything we do goes into that app. All of the information we put out, it's separate on the website and on Twitter and on YouTube. It's aggregated in one convenient package in the app. So head to the App Store or Google Play and check it out. And of course, it does benefit the long-term survivability of this enterprise, and I appreciate that. All right, I am finished for now. If we have anything, I don't want to say breaking news-wise, but if there's a major shift later, I would say the odds are pretty good I'll have another video update later this afternoon around the 5 o'clock advisory. But if something comes up before then, I'll certainly jump in and put something together that's much more brief than this. But I thought it was important and interesting that we had to talk about all these different things. So thanks for listening. I am Mark Sadeth, HurricaneTrack.com. Have a great rest of your Thursday. I'll talk to you again by 5 p.m. Eastern today, if not sooner.